The coronavirus pandemic is not only affecting health of millions of people, but is also damaging our economy. Actions announced to check the spread of virus resulted in halt in economic activity. There is an impending danger of economy going into recession and GDP growth rate being zero or even negative. GDP, gross domestic product, measures how healthy an economy is, and we record monetary value of all goods and services produced in the country for a specific time. There are various ways to calculate it, but the most used form is adding consumers' total consumption in its private capacity, spending by government, investment done by businesses, and net of export. Let's understand the component of the formula. Consumption or personal consumption expenditure is the money value of whatever we buy. It could be goods like car or laptops, or services like lunch at McDonald's, haircut at a salon, or membership of a club. The second component is G, or government spending. Money used by all forms of government to do public works like building highways or school, or maybe SEZ to develop a resource-rich area. I, or investment done by businesses in the purchase of machinery or building. It also includes the purchase of a house by individuals. Net of export take care of what is coming into the country and what is going out of the country. When we export, we earn money, and when we import, we spend money. If export is more than import, it's a surplus, otherwise it's a deficit. When we add all of them, we got GDP. The percentage change of GDP over time is growth rate, which is mostly refers to. Normally, if the economy is healthy, growth rate expands. If it's in bad shape, it's contracting. A negative growth rate for 2 consecutive quarters is called recession. If we are calculating GDP at market value or current price of goods and services, it is nominal GDP, or GDP at current price. Nominal GDP adjusted for inflation is called real GDP. The Indian economy was not in good shape before the pandemic begins. The economy was not growing as good as it was doing in the same period a year before. It was slowing down. Part of GDP was going down aside from government spending, which was going up during the period. Global slowdown and weak rural spending pulled down the GDP to low numbers. In January, WHO declares Covid-19 as a health emergency, but the government doesn't respond it on time. In March, India saw a rise in Covid-19 cases. The government decided to enforce a pan-India lockdown to check community transmission of the virus. This was to buy out time for a poor medical system to upgrade for health emergency. The lockdown permits only the essential service to operate. Hotels, restaurants, stores, bus service, air service, and even trains were closed for operation. The movement restriction put 90% of truck out of road and severely affected supply chains. There were many confusions regarding relaxations, which made things worse. Almost halted economy affected consumption, investment, export and import, and even government spending. The consumption expenditure, which alone accounts for 58% of GDP, was witnessing a 67% cut. Growing uncertainty regarding the lockdown's tenure, jobs, and income made people to spend less and only on essentials. Consumer spending is projected to fall to just 0.3% in FY21 from over 5.5% a year back. The McKinsey study finds 54% of people see a loss in income. Consumers changed their spending on groceries, household supplies, and at-home entertainment. But not essential items saw a major cutback in spending. Footwear, consumer electronics, personal care, takeaway and delivery, and out-of-home entertainment all suffered heavily. Consumer spending and lockdown affected the production, manufacturing, and service sector. The Purchasing Managers Index and India Service Business Index was down to 27.1 and 5.4 in April. That shows slowdown in the sector. India's factory output contracted in March by 16.7%, and fixed investment was contracted by 3.5%. Housing projects are delayed and construction has come to complete standstill. Housing sales dropped by 35% and commercial space demand may shrink by 30%. A FICCI report states more than 50% of businesses are affected by the lockdown. Transport, travel, tourism, hotel, sports, entertainment, financial sector and retail are the worst hit sectors. The lockdown was so severe that the car manufacturer doesn't make any sale in local markets. Dollar value of export fell by 35%, whereas overall export for financial year 1920 will drop to 4.78%. Indian import was also down by 28.7% in March. Volume import declines to 63.17 million tons. Limited evacuation of raw material, supply chain breakdown, and shortage of labor forced the volume import to decline. However, the Indian trade deficit was narrowed to $9.8 billion from $11 billion. The government asked its department to cut first quarter expenses by almost 60%. The drop in all sectors is visible in GDP figure. According to various estimates, India's GDP growth rate may drop to zero or even negative. It means we are not growing or producing even what we were doing last year. But this will have serious implications on the economy. Barclays estimates if the lockdown ends by early June, India will lose $234 billion or $4.64 billion a day. Tax revenues coming under GST were dropped due to closure of business, and earnings from income tax were short by $53 billion. Work closure has resulted in job losses and pay cuts. According to CMIE, the number of people who lost their jobs stood at 27%, and the one who is actively seeking a job was 36%. Another survey by Ajim Premji University finds 8 out of 10 workers in urban areas and 57% in rural areas have lost their employment. Half of salaried workers received a pay cut or no salary, whereas 49% have reported no money to buy even a week of essential item. Self-employed workers saw a drop of 90% in their earnings. For casual workers, this drop was 50%. This all is going to impact the revenue of government and the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is the gap between revenues and expenditure of our government. The gap can be filled by either reducing expenditure, increasing earnings, or by borrowings. India's fiscal deficit stood at 5.0% in March and is expected to go beyond 6% due to economic slowdown. A high fiscal deficit is not good for economy as it can lead to rise in prices and can severely impact sovereign ratings. Low ratings significantly reduce investment in the country. FRBM Act fixed it at 3% of GDP. India's debt to GDP ratio is likely to rise from 70% to 76% of the GDP. ILO estimates 400 million Indians are at risk of being pushed deeper into poverty. Millions of laborers are leaving for their hometowns amid lockdown, resulting in labor shortages. This will create another problem for businesses. Most of India's business hubs are under the red zones with severe restrictions. The lockdown is also affecting the harvesting season of Rabi crops. Supply chain was disrupted. Most of produce could not reach mandis. A monetary stimulus is required to revive the economy. Supporting businesses alone will not revive the economy as it cannot increase the demand. An income support to at least 30 to 32% of bottom households is needed when the lockdown ends to increase the demand. Immediate relief can only cause inflation. Food is the primary concern now. India's food godowns are filled with grains and have a stock equal to 3 times of buffer stock. Free ration to bottom 40% can be distributed to solve their food requirements. A temporary ration card was issued to help them procure the ration. A large section of poor are not covered under PDS. Tax relief and tax reforms, loan, interest moratoriums, waivers, and working capital assistance for businesses to start operating again. Government announces a package totaling to 10% of GDP at the time of making this video.